Yes, well, I've been contending for some time now that carbon, in the form of carbon dioxide, is actually good for the planet, healthy for the planet, and that you are doing the planet an ecological favor by burning coal. However, I realize that that is a minority position, and it's rather dramatic, hard to believe for people that watch the media these days, and all they hear about is how carbon dioxide is bad for the planet. But I believe that I can defend that position. However, that being beside the point, yes, indeed, we're going to hear a lot of talk about your carbon footprint. And do you know what your carbon footprint is, Joey?
I have no idea.
Tons per person per year?
I know. I think I've seen the figure of what the average American puts into the air, and I can't remember it. Can you enlighten me?
I just have some numbers that I remember from last week when this came up, and the lowest footprint state, California or close to it, Florida, or some of the more mild climate states, and they're on the order of 12 tons per person per year. And the upper end would be Wyoming with like 150 tons per person per year. And this is tons of carbon. Keep in mind, your car weighs about 2 tons. So
Is it?
that's a lot of carbon. People don't realize that there's a lot of mass in the atmosphere because they don't perceive that air is heavy. But if you want to run a calculation of how heavy the air is, I'll just give you some numbers. Sea level pressure is 14.7 pounds per square inch.
Yeah.
And the Earth is 4,000 mile radius. So you can figure out from those two numbers what the weight of the atmosphere is, and it's probably a rather large number.
Very, very large number. Many, many, many tons. And beyond this 12 tons, okay, I think it was, so maybe it works out that the average American might be putting up, let's say, 40 tons.
Yeah, something like 40 or 50. It would be the mean overall average over all these states in America.
A year. And this, is this carbon dioxide weight or carbon?
No, that would just be your carbon footprint. So they're not talking about oxygen, so they're just talking about the carbon part of the carbon dioxide.
Carbon alone, okay, and so this, I assume, is proportional to the danger we supposedly face on by the is it carbon or carbon dioxide percentage or parts per million in the atmosphere?
It's carbon dioxide in parts per million.
Okay, so
it's 380 parts per million.
Right, we're at 3
1/100 of 1%.
Yes, very small part of the overall atmospheric.
When you say it that way, it's not so scary. When you talk about tons of carbon, then it sounds scary. So that's why they never, the alarmists never talk about the actual percentage of just 400ths of 1%. Oh, it's only 400ths of 1%. That's the greenhouse gas. Yeah, but the water vapor in the air is 1 to 2%, and that's the greenhouse gas. It's even more greenhouse gas. So the carbon dioxide is hardly even noticeable in terms of even the total greenhouse gases we have. No wonder they hadn't been able to measure anything due to carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
So, the whole thing is pretty shaky.
Yeah, and well, now talk about the attempt to limit emissions of carbon in terms of going after people in for their carbon footprint. I've heard the cap and trade is one scheme for limiting the total amount of carbon. Of course, it creates a market, and we've talked about how that can be corrupted pretty easily. And others have talked about a straight carbon tax, which I presume would be something like an income tax, where if you emit over a certain amount...
No, this would all be just a corporate tax. It wouldn't be an individual tax.
on individuals. Yeah, he would not likely get down to that
level, and it would be placed on those who actually directly burn coal or anything that produces carbon dioxide. You can go into a plant, any kind of a plant that actually has a combustion process, and you can measure the amount of carbon dioxide or carbon that they're converting to carbon dioxide in that plant in their process. And then you could tax them based on that amount. And of course, they'd have to pass that tax on to their customers if they could. And all those costs would trickle down to the economy, and there'd be a price adjustment. Everybody would then, the market would then adjust to those prices, and things that required a lot of energy then would be priced out of the market, and we'd do with a lot less of those things. And so it would be a tremendous energy saver to have a carbon tax. But of course, it would be a tremendous hardship on the consumer.
Well, yeah, the price is going to get passed to consumers, and of course you're going to inhibit the diversity of the economy.
Well, that's right. It would be a total reshuffling of the economy instead of a random way, because nobody would really be able to anticipate too accurately which of the businesses out there that are going now would go out of business, and what kinds of things we would simply have to do without because they were too expensive, because the carbon tax would drive them out of business. For example, aluminum cans or anything made out of aluminum, you would anticipate that we'd probably have to do without those things, And then bricks and anything that's pottery, anything that's fired in a kiln, which is a very high energy. Glass, is a very high energy intensive industry. Paper is another. People don't realize how much energy it takes to make paper, because you have a process where you have warm water and have to evaporate. You have to heat that. A huge amount of energy to make paper.
Yeah.
Really, our lifestyle, our prosperity is based on the assumption of cheap and plentiful energy. And carbon tax then would change that dynamic entirely and suddenly make it so that we didn't have cheap, abundant energy anymore. We had very expensive, scarce energy because of the tax. And then the whole economy would have to adjust to the new situation.
Yeah, it reminds me of what I've read about the New Deal, which included a lot of price controls over many goods, as if the government knew, how what really things ought to cost, and what it did was create a total chilling effect on people doing business or going into business. You could no longer kind of predict. I mean, it threw a lot of people out of business who were not in a good location, for instance, depending on how they priced goods. And so you had all kinds of negative, disruptive, reverberating effects through the economy by all these arbitrary controls.
Controls are a lot worse than taxes. They're more disruptive to the economy. They are really fundamentally flawed. Taxes, on the other hand, if you're going to have any taxes, I would argue that any tax you levy on the economy is going to disrupt that economy in certain ways that perhaps you didn't anticipate, or perhaps you were trying to direct the economy with a tax policy, and that would be the energy tax would be one example of directing an economy with tax policy. But I would argue that any tax on an economy does direct that economy in certain ways that are not often anticipated.
Right, and it has the effect of taxes are probably more predictable than in their effects than price controls and bans, and various bans. And of course, there's in this whole green initiative, in this green fervor, they're wanting to regulate all kinds of emissions. Not just carbon, but methane and all kinds of things. They're going to look at each technology and arbitrarily decide how evil it is.
Well, think of all the bureaucrats that you have to hire to make all these decisions about who's going to be able to admit what.
Yeah.